Good afternoon, everybody on the call. Thank you for joining us. I'm Selena Lowe, your DC Post President, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our March program. Good to see you all, and we have over 250 people who've chosen to dial in on this topic, and which is great because it's Capital Week in DC as well. Before we get started, could you all make sure that your audio is muted? And please type your name and email address into the chat box so that we can take attendance, and we're also offering a 1-hour PDH certificate for participating in this program. Next slide. Bree, I'd like to thank our programs and event committees for putting this program together, setting up our registration and advertising for this event. Our program co-chairs this year are Bree Beal and James Pittman, and Alison Yates, who manages our website, and Whitney Stoll as well. I think Whitney's on the call. There's lots of behind the scenes work that goes behind our monthly programs. So we're all here on a volunteer basis and do our best every time. I'm very appreciative of all the hard work that goes in. We have a great panel of speakers today to tell us about upcoming opportunities and the outlook for GSA schedules. Jennifer Schaus is our moderator for this hour, and she's been a wonderful resource for gathering the best panelists to talk with us today. We'd like to thank her for her work. We know it's going to be a great discussion. So I'd like to begin the program, and as is traditional, we want to start with a brief moment of silence to remember all our active duty military, our first responders, and all those who need our care and support right now. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn over the Pledge of Allegiance to the DC Post young member, and today we have Savannah Henley of Procon Consulting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Where are you?
I'm right here.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks very much, Savannah. That was great. I would like to thank our post sponsors for their continued support of the DC Post, which is one of the largest posts within the society. We have WSP, Terracon, AMT Engineering, Kaufman Engineers, Alpha Corporation, Prime AE, and Jacobs. Next slide. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank our sustaining member firms that were good enough to join us this year. I hope they're on the call. It's Everactive, Sorba Engineering, Incoma Engineering and Consultancy, Fesco Engineering, and Stone Security Engineering. So thank you very much. Look forward to your participation with the Post this year. We really appreciate the support of our annual and sustaining members and sponsors. We couldn't put these events on without you, and we're grateful for outstanding sponsorship. Your support helps us meet our goals and provides excellent content for our members, industry and government engagement, building resilient communities, connecting with our future leaders through our student and young member groups, enriching the STEM pipeline, and preparing our military and veterans for life after service. If you'd like to be a supporter of the Post, please let us know. Our contact information is on the website, and there are various sponsorship levels that might interest you to show your support. So now I'd like to begin our special program, GSA Schedule, Opportunities and Outlook in the AEC Industry. I wanted to point out to you that by participating, you will get a professional development certificate. So be sure to enter your contact information, your name and your email in the chat section, and we'll get you your certificate after this program. I'd like to introduce you to our moderator for the GSA program. It's Jennifer Schaus. She is the founder of Schaus Associates based in Washington, D.C. Her organization helps product, service, and software firms prepare and submit the proposal to get onto the GSA schedules. The firm also provides post-award contract administration and assistance with GSA modifications and subsequent renewals during the length of the contract. She's built a vast library of over 450 complimentary webinars on government contracting topics, including all parts of the FAR and DFARs. Her information is on her website. Jennifer, it's my pleasure now to turn the program over to you to introduce our panelists.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Selena. Thanks to everybody who has joined us today. And thanks to all of the great people at SAME, obviously including Selena Lowe, Bree and Whitney, and everyone that took time to help assemble the slides and everything that goes into these programs behind the scenes. There's a lot of time and effort that's put into it. So I'm honored and flattered to be here as your host today. We've got a really exciting group of panelists who are going to provide some valuable insight from their own lens, from a legal lens, from the GSA lens, and then just from a data and forecasting vantage point as well. So I think that should give all of the attendees great perspective on what's happening currently and what will be happening with architecture, engineering, and construction as it intersects with GSA and GSA schedule opportunity. So I'm going to start here with ladies first. We've got Ashley Sanderson from Deltek. Deltek, as you guys all know, provides the GovWin platform. They're a data aggregator and provide a lot of valuable content for government contractors that are looking to pursue various opportunities, organize solicitations, gather contact information, and so forth. Ashley's a supervisor, a variety of analysts focused on Department of Transportation, the VA, and the Army. Next, we're going to cover GSA, and I don't know if one of our panelists maybe maybe wants to mute. It sounds like there's a little bit of background noise. We've got Ralph Buchanan, who is here locally representing the National Capital Region. He heads up the OSDBU, which is the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. So Ralph is responsible for making sure that the small businesses are working with GSA and that GSA is meeting their set-aside goal. So Ralph, thank you so much for joining us. And just as a side note, before Ralph joined GSA, he was actually at the SBA, so he's got a lot of great knowledge and content to share. Also from GSA, we've got Andy Kirkpatrick. He represents Region 2, which is the northeast part of the U.S., formerly with the Army. Thank you for your service, Andy. And he is part of GSA's Business Development Group. He works with over 3,000 vendors, ensuring that they are understanding everything that goes into the GSA schedule, how to market it, how to utilize it. And he also works with federal government agencies. Last but not least is Greg Jacobs. He's a speaker in our own government contracting webinar series. He's with the law firm Polsinelli, and he works with government contractors, representing them on bid protests and other litigation matters regarding small business set-asides, construction, architecture, and legal disputes. So we can, I believe, move to the next slide, please. Okay, and here we're going to turn it over to Greg Jacobs from Polsinelli. Greg, thanks again for joining us, and the floor is all yours.
Thanks very much, Jennifer. Thank you to the SAME DC Post for inviting me to speak today. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. As Jennifer mentioned, I'm a government contracts attorney, so I advise government contractors of all sizes on a variety of issues relating to government contracts, including AE and construction contractors, and including contractors that have GSA Schedule contracts, which from a legal perspective have a number of general advantages and can be a very effective way to contract with the government, as you will hear today. I have 4 slides, 4 different topics that I see as being relevant to AE and construction contractors. I'll start with the first one, which seems like potentially a funny place to start, but it is limitations on the ability of the government to use the GSA schedule in this area. And the primary limitation on that is the Brooks Act. The Brooks Act provides that AE services need to be procured in a different way than the government procures other services. AE services are procured under the Brooks Act with a focus primarily on capabilities and only secondarily on price once the capabilities piece, once a contractor has been preliminarily selected on the basis of capabilities, which is very different than typical federal supply schedule contracting. And so one of the things that I did in preparation for this presentation is look at the GSA schedule contracts for a number of the SAME members. And if you look at those professional services schedule contracts, which is the most likely place where these types of services would reside, the vast majority, if not all of them, specify that these are not Brooks Act services. So those of you that are in this space are probably familiar with this distinction. If you were thinking about getting into this space, just know that there is a division typically between what is procured under the schedule versus what will be procured using what are called FAR Part 36 Brooks Act procedures. What are AE services for the purposes of the Brooks Act? Well, the definition is there on the slide. The first one is pretty easy, and that's where if it's required by law that someone who is licensed or certified to perform the services, then it is by definition AE services. The next two are a little bit more of a gray area, though, and that's where it can become somewhat difficult to draw the line. So I would just say, in terms of determining what you would hope to sell under the schedule in the area of AE services versus what you would sell through other means, it's important to think about that carefully. Look at the Brooks Act, consult with the government if need be, to determine what would fall within the permissible scope of what you can sell under the federal supply schedule. Next slide, please. So an important issue for all contractors, and one that comes up certainly in the AE and construction area, are wage determinations. The 2 primary laws that are implicated in this space are the Service Contract Labor Standards, sometimes called the Service Contract Act, and the Davis-Bacon Act. And in nearly all cases, one of those 2 laws will apply to the to the wages and benefits that are provided to employees under AE construction type services. Service contract labor standards apply to general service contracts. So really anything that is not a more specialized type of service contract, you would apply the service contract labor standards. One of the more specialized laws, of course, is the Davis-Bacon Act, which applies to construction, alteration, or repair services. And for those not familiar, what those laws do is that they have the Department of Labor provide wage and benefit determinations that are applicable to certain positions and in certain markets, and require the contractor to pay its employees at least those wages and benefits. So it's critically important that as contractors, you determine which wage determination is going to apply. Is this a service contract, labor standards contract, or is this a Davis-Bacon contract based on the nature of the services? And then actually pay employees as required by those wage determinations. Now, there's another wrinkle for union contracting. If there's a collective bargaining agreement that is properly applied to the employees performing the work on the contract, then those CBA wages and benefits will, in most circumstances, supersede the service contract or Davis-Bacon wages. So you also have to keep track of those differences. But under all of those requirements, the failure to properly pay required wages and benefits can have substantial detrimental effect, can result in contract termination, back pay, monetary penalties, suspension and debarment, and other types of sanctions. So it's an area to pay attention to and really make sure that you get right. Next slide, please. I want to talk for a moment about the price reductions clause. Those of you who are veterans to federal supply schedule contracting will be very familiar with the price reductions clause. It was the bane of most federal supply schedule contractors' existence for a large number of years. And what the price reductions clause required, or what it continues to require if it does apply to your contract, is that the contractor maintain a pricing relationship between the government customers that are ordering under the federal supply schedule and a certain class of commercial customers that are sometimes called a tracking customer or a basis of award or BOA customer. This is sometimes called a most favored customer or a most favored nations type of clause. It was something that I can tell you that contractors very often got wrong, would sometimes face really substantial monetary penalties. It was hard to implement, hard to administer, and even sophisticated contractors ended up incurring quite a bit of liability. In recognition of that, the GSA has phased in an alternative to the price reductions clause called transactional data reporting. And what TDR does is it approaches the pricing issue a little bit differently. It requires contractors to make monthly reports of all of their government-wide sales under the contract, so government customers can then engage in price comparisons and make better pricing decisions. The transactional data reporting is now opt-in across all schedules, and I think a large number of contractors have opted into the TDR, which of course then removes the price reductions clause from the contract. A couple quick points to note. One is that we don't yet have a lot of data points on whether there are similar compliance issues with TDR as there were under the price reductions clause. There haven't really been a lot of publicly visible enforcement actions relating to TDR. And so it's too early to say whether it really provides a huge advantage to contractors in terms of making compliance easier. It is the case that under most schedule contracts, contractors will still be required to make pricing disclosures during the contract formation stage, and getting that part wrong, making incorrect or inaccurate pricing disclosures can still subject the contractor to liability, even if the price reductions clause is phased out. And that's why it's important to be very careful when you're making those disclosures, and to work with a really experienced consultant like Jennifer if you're getting into your first federal supply schedule contract. Next slide, please. Finally, we mentioned the issue of price a couple times. This one is a little bit forward-looking, but just to have on your radar screen, as part of the 2019 NDAA, Congress put out a new rule that says that for multiple award type contracts where any qualified offerer can receive the contract, there no longer has to be the establishment of hourly rates at the umbrella contract level. The implication of that for GSA is that if and when this rule is implemented, and GSA is still considering if and how it will implement this for the federal supply schedule, at the main GSA contract level, a contract could be put in place without any hourly rates. Whereas now a lot of the time in the negotiation process is spent on those rates and negotiating the government's best possible rates. That process could be skipped. It could be solely based on qualifications. And then the awarding agency would have to have a competition based on price. So it would streamline the federal supply schedule process a little bit, de-emphasize price in the initial stages. And it will be very interesting to watch and see how and whether GSA implements that change. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jennifer or on to Ralph.
Great, Greg. I think Ralph is up next, so we can move to the next. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ralph Buchanan from the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization here in the National Capital Region. You'll hear the term NCR or Region 11. The Small Business Office of Small Business Utilization is basically born off of Public Law 95-507, and it is effectively an organization that is looking to advocate for small businesses across the way to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get small business the amount of contracts with the federal government that they can get. Statutorily, we know that 23% of work is supposed to be targeted for small business, and now the government is up in around 25, near 26%. So things are going really, really well on that realm. My job is to be an advocate here in this local area. Just to let you know, you're going to hear from Andy Kirkpatrick in a little while, and he's going to talk from another region within GSA. But I wanted to let you know that just overall, GSA is one of the leaders in the federal government in terms of being a contracting office for multiple agencies across the country, as well, we have stepped up and we have gotten an A+ in SBA scorecard in 2019. We're tracking to do that again in 2020. We've had about 10 years of A or better. So, we're doing what we can in advocacy to small business. Next slide, please. I am coming from a slightly different stance in that a lot of what's procured here in this area is done in the construction arena, and I want to just make sure that I pay a little bit of attention to that as well. I think when Andy talks, he'll get in a little bit more into the A&E and that type of work. But anyway, our construction services typically are done through IDIQ contracting. So as you guys know, if you want to be involved in this world, you have to know all the alphabets and you have to be kind of well-versed in what's going on. So for us, it's IDIQ contracting in FAR 16.5. Typically, these things are a base in 2 years, and they can value up to about $10 million. Both A&E and construction can be used through this IDIQ method, but mainly what happens in construction, it is not done on a schedule. A&E services will be on a schedule. That's the basic difference there. For small businesses that are looking to get involved in terms of construction in this area, we're looking for design services, design build type contractors that can self-perform in the construction area, the construction services as well, and then what's known as CMAs. These are construction management as advisors. So there's some facilities management on some of our O&M contracts as well. So there's opportunity out there, but it requires that you are tactically looking. It requires you tactically looking at opportunities that make sense for you and kind of get in where you fit in. And the other thing I wanted to mention there is it's still a relationship-based situation, guys. You know, you hear or the expression that the government buys from people that they know and people that they like and people that they trust. And that's exactly what it's about. So, you know, it's very important that you establish the relationships with the contract officers that are putting things out. And then I am a proponent, if you're ever listening to me counsel small businesses, I will always tell you to kind of get in where you fit in, and then we're going to organically grow our footprint. And I just feel that's the best way to kind of get that happening. Next slide, please. So the typical requirements, as I mentioned, is they are in terms of what we do are in construction. So it's that NAICS code 236, 220. We also have 561, 210 facility support and 561, 720. Those are, you know, the janitorial and housekeeping and things of that nature. One of the things I wanted to mention before I skirted by that, because I want to make sure that people understand, we as the nation's landlord, you know, we are responsible for the care and feeding of government buildings across the country, as well as we do things with fleet service, and we also have like commissioned art and things of that nature. So there's a various amount of type of work that's out there. But, you know, in terms of what we're doing here today, you know, let's get back to it. So, you know, the A&E is definitely something that we're looking for contractors, as well as the repair and alterations. We will have certain groups that are involved with just that. They are looking to do certain repairs that might come up on an ad hoc or emergency basis or things of that nature. HVAC, elevator repair, things of that nature are always things that the government needs, GSA needs. And so if that's one of your sweet spots, you know, I encourage you to look into it. But as I mentioned before, you know, the ability to design, build, and have the ability to self-perform is what's happening there. And the last thing I wanted to mention on there is the leasing of commercial space. That is something that there is a place for small business in that area, because we are literally, whether we would buy the building and it's a GSA building or whether we are leasing it from someone else, there are spaces for small business to be able to get in and perform with various construction related projects in that realm. Next slide, please. And so this is my final slide. And so how do you begin with us? The first thing, and probably the most important thing, is to get intimately involved with our forecast of opportunities. And I just want to spend a couple minutes on this. For our forecast of opportunities, and for the small businesses that are out there, contracting officers are using the forecast as part of their market research to decide which way they're going to buy goods and services. So, for example, they will put out an RFI or sources sought to say, we are looking for businesses that could do this type of work or that type of work or whatever. And those things are being put out through beta.sam.gov, and they're looking for you. And they're asking the question, are you out there? And you have to respond to those RFIs, because if you don't, what happens is they will come, I'll see their market research, and it'll say, I put this out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I had, 5 large businesses apply. I only had 1 small business, or I didn't have any small business. And my hands become immediately tied behind my back, because we haven't made the case that you're out there. I know you're out there, but if you don't do the work and say that you're out there, it kind of falls on deaf ears. So what I'm asking you guys to do is go to our forecast, realizing that it's a living document. Download our forecast. It allows you to download it into Excel. The next thing I would tell you to do is sort on our forecast on opportunities that are in the pre-planning stage and the planning stage, because things that come out after the planning stage, the acquisition strategy has already been set, or the solicitation is out, or they're evaluating awards. No one's talking to you anyway. We want to look at things that are in the pre-planning and the planning phase and see what's there for us. If you see something that works for you, this is what I need you to do. If you see something that works for you, in that Excel file, you'll see the contract officer's name and you'll see the contract officer's email. This is what I would like to see you do. I would like to see you write an email to that contracting officer, because remember, that's the person that can commit the government, okay? And it would be a great idea if you also CC'd whoever the small business specialist is for that opportunity. If it's here in the National Capital Region, it's probably me. We have an overlay organization called Central Office. It could be them. I am surrounded by Region 3, which goes all the way up to Philadelphia and comes down into Virginia. So it could be that person. But if you see something that makes sense, write an email to the contracting officer and copy the small business specialist, because we want everybody to know that that's one. Okay, and here comes another one, and here comes another one. And we're helping the contracting office do their market research, if that made sense at all. Okay, look for the opportunities on beta.sam.gov, as I sort of mentioned before. A real great thing to do is set up search engines. I am a proponent for being very targeted in what you do. There's a tenet in business development that says you don't want to be a mile wide and an inch deep. When you're a mile wide, you're everywhere, but you really don't know anything. So what I'm challenging people to do instead, here's my prop. I want you to be an inch wide and a mile deep. So wherever you're going to be involved, I want you to pick that place, that agency, that division, that subdirectorate, and find out what they're doing, establish yourself, and then we're going to grow from the inside out, okay? So pay attention to beta.sam.gov. And then there's always opportunities to subcontract. Everybody wants to be a prime, but there's a couple of opportunities to subcontract. I mentioned the GSA subcontracting directory. I'm leaving it there, as well as SBA has one as well, so that you can patch to see, based on the work that you're doing by NAICS code, you can see primes that have business as well. Lastly, there's a system called ESRS, and it allows you to be able to see how large businesses are performing in those areas. But the main thing is you get to find out who the small business liaison officers are. And why that's important, I tell people all the time, if you're in government contracting, you really have two clients. You have the federal government itself, and then you have the large primes that are supporting the federal government. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about your subcontractor, okay? That's it for my slides, Jennifer.
Great. Thank you, Ralph. Andy, you're up next, and we can move to the next slide here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ralph, thank you so much. That was the perfect segue, because you are echoing, and which is great, because now I don't have to repeat it. So so what Ralph does for the small and disadvantaged, I do as well for those, but I also do above and beyond that. And so yes, I sit in Region 2.
Jackie Santisteban.
But my reach really goes as far as the country goes. So before I am in business development right now. Before that, I was a customer service director, which meant I worked mostly with organizations on the government side. So I have a network of.
I'm good. I have a question. I made a flight reservation yesterday for Portugal for late August.
Bree, are you able to help mute whoever? Thank you. Sorry about that, Andy. Go ahead.
How dare they make travel plans? This is the place to be. Come on. it's a good thing she didn't recite the credit card information over there. That would have been a bad thing. So again, as I was saying, for the business development area, I have access to this network of customer service directors, and so what we do in tandem with the folks that work on the organizational side, we work with the vendors to really provide the customer relationship and marketing support for basically everything. Yes, GSA is in 2 areas: the PBS, Public Building Service, and FAS. And as Ralph said, I am in the FAS, the Federal Acquisition Service area. However, we are one GSA, and so whatever opportunity that you see out there that is enticing to you, please still think of me as someone who can help. Next slide. So that's what we do. I think the next one is how. There we go. How can we help? So we basically have 3 main ways of getting contracts done, and through OASIS, Alliant 2, and the multiple award schedule. The multiple award schedule now, as you know, going through consolidation, there was a kind of a big upheaval, and now things are starting to settle down. The dust is settling. Folks are making sure that they are in the right area, and so this is a great opportunity for me to make sure that you are, as Ralph again mentioned, having a dialogue with that contracting officer and making sure that you are in the right place so that you can be found. And because it moved from those schedules into a NAICS code situation, so that it's imperative now that you are in the right area, because if you're not in the right area, you're not going to get the nods. You're not going to find these opportunities. Next. There we go. And this, the most important one, and of course, thanks again to Ralph, because this was most of it. But why we do what we do is to really bring that human touch to the acquisition process. And so to reiterate what Ralph said, if there is an RFI or an RFQ out there, and you have CC'd, absolutely CC Ralph, CC me, absolutely, reach out to me, because I do have those connections on the customer service area. There may be a way there to further enhance and really influence the relationship there, and have really a good way of guiding the government towards writing better RFIs and RFQs. And so I've been in the business development area for about a year now, and that is really one of the overriding complaints that I hear, is that the government's not very good at writing these RFIs and RFQs. And as a consequence, that is what really kind of inhibits competition. And that is what we are looking for in the business development area. We're looking to enhance competition. We're looking to get as many folks involved in these opportunities, so the government gets what they need. So the government gets what they need, and they get it for a good price in an efficient, cost-effective way. So that's what we try to do here with customer accounts and stakeholder engagement. We really try to work with all of the other GSA divisions. That goes for all the divisions in FAS, as well as the ones in PBS, to really make sure that you are utilizing GSA to your fullest extent and your fullest benefit. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Andy. And last but not least, we've got Ashley Sanderson from Deltek to talk about some opportunities in architecture, engineering, and construction. Ashley, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Sammy, for inviting me to speak today. As Jennifer said, I work for Deltek. on the GovOneIQ product, I wanted to explain it a little bit before I dig into what data I was pulling. GovOneIQ is sort of a one-stop shop for all of your business intel needs. We provide cradle-to-grave tracking of requirements and all the support that you could need in between. We're like an extension of your business development team, if you will. We've got over 150 full-time research analysts and assigned customer success managers for training and research report. But what my area does, where we track opportunities, we provide a portal for market intelligence in federal, state, and local markets. So we build out and track opportunities so you can more easily manage requirements you would like to or are already pursuing. We help summarize and cut down sort of to brass tacks so you can make a faster judgment on what opportunities are really worth pursuing for you. And then when you do choose what you want to pursue, we can kind of keep our finger on the pulse to make sure that you're staying abreast of anything that could come down the line regarding it. We do this by monitoring the requirement and also through the relationships that we try to build with the government officials who are overseeing these individual opportunities. So we're staying in contact with them and also just watching for various changes to alert you of a change in service requirements or a change in due dates, or if a question and answer document is issued, things like that. We do a lot more too. We offer on-demand research. For example, over 18,000 research requests were fulfilled in 2019 for things like agency outreach, public documents, vendor information, submitting anonymous questions for you, or fact checking. So partnering with us is sort of an excellent tool to add to your toolbox to help ensure your growth and success in these features. If you're not currently a client and you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me. Next slide, please. Okay, so I used our GovOne database of active opportunities to pull together a bit of an overview of where we're seeing the money going to over the next 18 months. So I started by searching for any of our requirements that have been classified as AEC requirements by our analysts that are in a forecasted or pre-RFP phase with an expected solicitation date in the next 18 months. So anything early development or imminent that's going to be released in the next month to September 2022. This is giving me over 1,780 anticipated requirements with that total estimated value of 137 billion. Our estimated values are coming from a few areas. We will use estimates that are provided by the government. Usually some of these AEC requirements that are weighted in the construction, we see more of a range. To let you know, we do use the higher range for estimating. We also use past contracting data to help share an idea if the government will not really provide that much insight as to what that value could be. So we'll look at previous service contracts to get an idea of what you might be looking at value-wise for like a follow-on. So from this data that I pulled out of GovOne, our top spending agencies for Outlook are weighted in defense, specifically Army. GSA is sort of the standout there as the civilian agency that we see a lot of spending at. No real surprise here with the Army accounting for the most money in our database when it comes to AEC type requirements. We've got almost 700 requirements for Army that are valued at 46 billion over the next 18 months. There are some standouts from the crowd. When I was looking into the Army requirements, there are 4 requirements that all have values that are estimated right now at or over $1 billion. That's nearly 30% of our total opportunity value for the next 18 months in the Army AEC market. The top 2 estimated value are both horizontal construction contracts out of the Army Corps of Engineers. One's from the Galveston district, the other one is from the Fort Worth district, so both down there in Texas. The nice thing about these is they do offer opportunity for many businesses to get involved. They are multiple award contracts. They have unrestricted awards and also different small business restricted types of awards. So looking at the previous awardees for these kinds of contracts, it really covered the gambit of set-asides. You saw small businesses, service disabled, veteran owned, women owned, all with awards under these 2. GSA is our second in value. There's not as many actual opportunities, but obviously a lot of money estimated. GSA had about 132 upcoming opportunities in our database, but a combined value of $45 billion. The requirement that does seem to be taking up a lot of that money is two requirements that we have our eyes on. They're both for the same thing. It's the Federal Strategic Sourcing Initiative for Building Maintenance and Operations. There's two competitions we're watching, one for unrestricted and one for small business. Strategic sourcing was mandated by the OMB's Budget Office and Federal Procurement Policy and implemented by OMB's memorandum in May 2005. The Federal Strategic Sourcing Initiative was established in 2006 by the Chief Acquisition Officers Council in collaboration with the Office of Federal Procurement Policy. This was a means for agencies to work together to improve the federal government acquisition value chain. At its core, the strategic sourcing program is striving to implement a commodity management approach to federal procurement. So GSA is embarking on a strategic sourcing solution for building maintenance and operations, which is one of several commodity groups that is seeking a more effective government-wide acquisition approach. Next slide, please. So here we have a bit of a different view. I wanted to look more at the money when it comes to what we have in the AEC realm that would be performed locally in the DMV area. So here we see DC has the most money. That is due to a specific GSA requirement that was for the consolidation of the FBI headquarters facility that's been around for quite some time. It's not gone away. According to the House Committee on Appropriations, they had an omnibus spending bill released on December 21st of 2020, encouraging the FBI to work with GSA to submit a prospectus for a new fully consolidated headquarters building at one of the three previously vetted sites. Also, we had read, according to the Washington Business Journal, officials from the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia are all expected to call on the new administration to revive the FBI headquarters project. Looking at Maryland and Virginia, Maryland has a lot of Army requirements coming to a total tune of $1.3 billion for 19 opportunities. That's followed by the Navy, who has 8 opportunities in the state worth $405 million. Virginia has a little less in value, but a lot of actual requirements. They're led by the Navy in value, $927 million for 18 requirements, but the Army is providing the bulk of requirements. There's 25 coming up in Virginia in the next 18 months for a total of $765 million up in the air. So looking at the local versus national, you see that they're kind of similar. The bulk of opportunities do lie within the defense agencies, specifically Army, when it comes to AEC kind of work. And GSA has fewer requirements, but there is a large value there. And next slide, please. Okay. So before I finish up, I did want to quickly mention some aspects regarding the category management changes and best-in-class contracts for GSA. So category management is an approach the federal government's applying to buy smarter and more like a single enterprise. The goals of government-wide category management are to deliver savings, value, and efficiency for federal agencies. They want to increase spend under management or agency spending based upon category management principles. The official OMB definition was spend on contracts that meet defined criteria for management maturity and data sharing. So in simple terms, category management classifies all procurement solutions within 3 tiers. So there is tier 1, which are mandatory use agency-wide solutions. Dollars are obligated on agency-wide contracts with mandatory use or mandatory consideration policies, along with standards set for data sharing and other criteria. There's tier 2, which are the multi-agency solutions. like the GSA mass contract is a tier 2 solution. And then you have tier 3, which is best in class. Best in class means that something has been designated by the Office of Management and Budget as a preferred government solution. So these are the contracts that are going to be pushed as the places to procure. They're great opportunities for you to try and get yourself on for future business. So for us, specifically looking at AEC or looking at facilities and construction, I just wanted to highlight the building maintenance and operations requirement that we were discussing in the previous slide, the strategic sourcing stuff, and also GSA global supply. And that wraps me up, so I will hand it back to Jennifer.
Super great intelligence and information. Ashley, thank you so much. And I don't know if we have another slide that just has contact information, I believe, for the panelists. So if anyone on the line has questions, I believe the best format is to type them into the chat box. But first, we're going to start with a couple that we've got here. And Greg, we'll start with you. What would you say are the major differences between Brooks Act, architecture, engineering, procurements, and those under the federal supply schedule?
Thanks, Jennifer. The most important difference relates to the role of price and when in the process it's considered. So under the Brooks Act, which is implemented under FAR Part 36, selection is to be made on the basis primarily of capabilities of the AE contractor. And then once a contractor is nominally selected, then a fair and reasonable price is negotiated. The federal supply schedule essentially does that process in reverse. To award a federal supply schedule contract, GSA has to first determine that the contractor's prices are fair and reasonable, the prices that are going to go onto the contract, and then the contractor can become eligible and ultimately put a contract in place. So the price is considered in the initial evaluation in awarding a federal supply schedule contract. Now, as I mentioned in my presentation, there's a chance that that piece is going to go away, or at least the consideration of price will be delayed until the actual ordering agency conducts an evaluation. But that's the fundamental difference between how you would approach a federal supply schedule contract and how procurement is done under the Brooks Act.
Okay, great, super. And now, Ralph, over to you. Can you talk about bonding requirements in the AEC contracts?
Sure. By and large, whenever you are dealing with contracts of any size and scope, especially where there's risk involved, there's going to be some level of bonding that's going to be necessary. This is straight up insurance. This is, you know, as a commercial would say, this was for the if in life, right? So, you know, you have to have a level of bonding that will take care of your participation for that single contract, and you also have to have it in aggregate. And so I tell people, when you look at bonding, you know, that is in place. There's a couple different types of bonding, but in this realm, that is in place just to make sure that in case you don't deliver, you know, the government is covered. Or if you know, don't do exactly what you're supposed to do in terms of, you know, specs or things of that nature, or there's something that's being damaged. Remember, I was mentioning earlier, we have, like, you know, precious artwork and things of that nature, put a hole in it, you know, that type of a thing. But one of the things I want to tell small businesses right now is make sure you're looking at your bonding level today and think about where you want to be tomorrow. And much like your credit, go and start working on increasing that bonding level right now, because in a lot of cases, bonding is a barrier to entry. If you need some help with bonding, I highly recommend you go to the SBA, the Office of Surety Guarantee. The person over there is a guy named Peter Gibbs. Peter, and then his last name is Gibbs, at sba.gov. And you can tell them that I sent you over there. They got a great program that will help you, put you in place with brokers to get your bonding or increase your bonding.
Great. Thank you so much. And Andy, over to you, since you're focused more on the federal supply schedules, and we all know that GSA has gone through various phases of consolidation, and with the most recent consolidation, can you talk about the positive and or negative impact that has had to the AEC industry?
Yeah, absolutely. It's well, it's really the price of progress. So the first thing is that it's really kind of decentralized the contracting process, as it were, and so there was a tendency before the consolidation to kind of lump things that didn't necessarily belong there into these kind of overarching buckets. Kind of a little bit what Ralph was saying before about being an inch or a mile long and only an inch deep. So rather than go forth with that process, we really kind of changed into one that is a little more laser focused as to what exactly they are offering. So the downside of that is that sometimes vendors and contractors are not in the right place at the right time. So they need to work with those contracting officers to make sure that they're in the right place.
Okay, great. And actually, I know at the tail end of your presentation, you touched on the state of Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Virginia opportunities with regards to GSA. Obviously, those are at the federal level. Can you talk about state and local government opportunities for AEC contracts?
Sure. So we really see that the state and local market, when it comes to AEC, is probably going to shrink in the next few years. We're thinking it's going to go from about $370 billion in 2020 to about $325 in 2023. That decline's really coming from community buildings, particularly like amusement or recreational facilities, educational facilities, both K-12 and higher education, and just general government offices shrinking. These categories are always the most susceptible to recessions due to the volatility of the localized funding streams and the political pressure to spend money elsewhere when tough times come. So we're looking that it'll probably decline. Obviously, the federal infrastructure plan that Biden is pushing could significantly boost K through 12 sort of in that AEC market, but it's a little early to know what's going to happen with that.
Okay. So I guess on that same note, let's, if we can continue here with you. So with the Biden infrastructure bill, do you feel that, I guess, do you guys think that a lot of those opportunities will then flow down to the state and local governments, or will there be some opportunities at the federal level?
I think there'll be opportunities at the federal level. I think it's a question of what are we really going to see? You know, right now, the environment's not great for getting the infrastructure passed. I know that they want $3 trillion right now. And from what I've been reading, that doesn't look like Congress is super apt to passing it that way. I do think, obviously, there's a stated need that this infrastructure needs to be maintained and picked up. So obviously something will be coming down the pipe. I don't think it'll be as large as what they're proposing right now. And I think that it'll probably be a little while. So I would foresee, as far as AEC spending federally, it's probably going to be more of, you know, maintaining, just getting us through this, you know, crisis that we were just in, and that the larger spending might be coming further down the pipe.
Okay, great. And Greg, back to you, Greg. Would you say that there are advantages to GSA deciding to remove hourly pricing at the FSS award level, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll actually wrap in a response. We got a good question in the chat from Philios Angelides. I hope I said that right, about the role of pricing and when certain pricing analysis is done. So I'll wrap in a response to that as well. So the major advantage is that taking that process out of the initial evaluation, where price would not be a factor in the award of the contracts, is first of all, it would streamline the process. And second of all, it would reduce potential liability for contractors that fail to properly disclose their sales data in support of the GSA contract award. As it stands now, and Jennifer, I know you're very familiar with this process, contractors do have to submit quite a bit of commercial sales information during the GSA Schedule contract formation process in order to set the pricing for their contract. The government needs to make sure that the prices that it's putting on the contract are appropriate. Now, there's a common misperception, particularly among companies that have never held a GSA Schedule contract, that GSA always gets the best price and is always entitled to the best price. I'd certainly be interested to get Andy and Ralph's take on this. But what I tell clients is that's not the case. The U.S. government is the largest purchaser of goods and services in the world. But for an individual contractor, it might not be so. That contractor may have much larger relationships where those commercial customers are entitled to even better pricing based on the size of the relationship. So if you have Bechtel as a customer for your AEC services, and that is a very large relationship that you have, but GSA would be purchasing smaller than that, then you can often effectively make the argument that GSA is not entitled to get the prices that are as good as Bechtel. But there's a second level of it, and that's the pricing analysis that takes place in connection with a particular order. So an agency then goes to purchase services off of the GSA schedule and engages in some form of limited competition where it's comparing prices among several different contractors. And in that case, what you see is you already have established fair and reasonable pricing on your schedule contract, but you're probably going to have to go even lower than that in order to win the particular opportunity that is being competed. So in that case, the advantage is of removing the price analysis for the award of the GSA contract is everything gets pushed down to that second level to where the real pricing analysis and competition is done. And so to Philios's question, which was when pricing is a part of the evaluation, especially for professional services, at what point do agencies evaluate if the pricing is reasonable versus being so low that the appropriate resource could not be attained? And that's what's called price realism. So for those of you who are not familiar with this, reasonableness is that your prices aren't too high. Realism are that your prices are not too low. In my experience, that takes place only in connection with the ordering activity. GSA, I've never seen a GSA contracting officer push back on an offerer and say, no, these prices are too low. It's always in the other direction. And frankly, GSA is not really in a position to know whether the prices will be too low to perform certain work. But the ordering activity that is procuring a specific scope of work using GSA schedule contracts will be in a position to make that determination. And if that analysis is either required or if the agency decides to do it, we'll then be able to say not only are these prices reasonable, i.e. not too high, but are any of these prices so low that the contractor would be unable to perform the work?
Great, thanks. And we've got another question coming in here on the chat. How will HR 1940 affect small businesses focused on the AEC market? Will it help or hinder them? I don't know if Ashley, if you have thoughts on that, or Ralph, Andy, Greg? Or any policy folks on the line?
I know, that's a good one. I can certainly do more research on that and get back to you, Robin.
Okay. And I think we talked about some of the pricing here. If anybody wants copies of the slides, they will be sent out. It looks like you will need to type in your full name as well as your email address. And then Ralph, over to you. How long should construction firms be in business before they start bidding for direct contracts?
That's a good question. And so when I talk about how long someone should be in business, you know, I don't want that to have them feel like they're being told that it's an absolute date, but I want them to look at it basically in three phases. There are businesses that have been in business, and I mean they're working in business for less than 3 years. And then there's maybe say like 3 to 5, 3 to 7, and then those over 7. Those less than 3, you know, you really are doing yourself probably a disservice trying to go after something that's maybe bigger than you are. You can't swallow that elephant yet. Look at subcontracting, get yourself in a position, establish your relationships. Those that are in that 3 to 5, 3 to 7 range, those are the people that should start looking at some of the special projects that we have, things that are quick hitting, ad hoc, things that come up from time to time. That's a good sweet spot for them. And then those companies that are a little bit more mature, 7 and up, 10 and up, things of that nature. Those are the guys can just go full bore.
Right, and I'll even echo your thoughts. There are a lot of times when we get prospects that think that they want the schedule because GSA has done a great job of marketing themselves. It really turns out that it's not in their best interest, that they haven't really read the fine print, and they may meet the requirements, but that really should not be a green light to go forward and hold your own schedule. So we always recommend looking at who the other vendors are that are on the schedule within the same special item number as you, and then parse out the businesses that are identified as large businesses because they have that subcontracting requirement. So subcontracting can be a great way, as you mentioned in your presentation, Ralph, as an entry point or a foray into government contracting, and that data is there, and you can look at the larges prices to ensure that you're not going to get squeezed too hard, and you're going to still be a profitable company should you decide to subcontract. So let me see. It looks like some more questions, or maybe just email addresses are coming in for the slides. Yeah, please continue to send in your questions. We've got a question here about GEs establishing a reasonable range. I don't know, Selena, is that you, if you're able to clarify your question?
Yeah, independent government estimates. Doesn't the government get an IGE, you know, when they have a solicitation or a prospective project, so that doesn't that give them the comparison of reasonable rates? I'm not sure. That was my question.
Yeah, I can take that one, Jennifer. This is Greg. Selena, that's a great question, and that is one factor in the pricing analysis. Absolutely, would be the independent government estimate. That's not something that the government can usually wholly rely on because sometimes those can have some issues in their calculation, and so government agencies will typically use a variety of comparisons to establish both reasonableness and realism. One being the IGE, but also comparison to other offers to make sure that they're all within a relative range. But that is absolutely one factor that's used, yes.
Okay, great. And it looked like somebody had another question about just what is available for construction companies under the new consolidated schedule. Andy, I'm happy to toss that over to you to talk about the special item numbers for those companies.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really kind of condensed, so there are no numbers anymore. It's not IT70. There's not any of those. It's based on basically on a combination of the SIN or the NAICS code. And so it depends on exactly which which goods or services that your company provides. So it should be, so there should have been in the old schedule those NAICS codes within the Schedule 70, but there's just no more of Schedule 70, and it's all NAICS codes.
Right, and I'll add on to that. So with the old 03 FAC, which is the facilities schedule, you had a variety of special item numbers under there, which typically started, I believe, with 899-1, -4, -7. And so now everybody is on just one GSA schedule, meaning the GSA schedule. And then the differentiator are the special item numbers under there, which sometimes now look like NAICS codes. Some have a little bit of a NAICS code resemblance with a letter. And some of the former special item numbers have been, say 3 or 4 of them have now been condensed into one. Is training provided to assist with preparing a proposal to get onto the schedule? That is something that we do. I'm not sure if SAME does it. I know GSA probably offers some classes and some educational information, I believe, through the Interact site and perhaps locally. I don't know, Ralph, if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, we would probably tell you we do a little, but that's not us all day long. We would probably refer you to your local PTAC or your SBDC or something of that nature, because that's what they've been charged. Their mission is to do that. They do that all day long, and they can help you, with those questions. That said, there is a PMO officer for the GSA schedule, and for the folks that are out there, if you have any questions about your schedule, you can literally write an email to mass.pmo@gsa.gov. And those guys, they have office hours from time to time that will allow you to just call in and ask your questions, or you can just write your question. I would do it as specifically as possible and let them come back and give you answers to it.
Right. Yeah, they're a great resource, as are the PTACs that you mentioned. Another question here, what resources could you recommend for those who have been awarded a schedule and need assistance with navigating the opportunities for your schedule? Maybe Andy, that could be you, and Ashley, you guys have some good data that could help the vendors as well. So I'll let you guys chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have those. It's, again, like I was talking about before, it's really just a question of if there is an opportunity that fits with your scope and fits with what you want to accomplish. Absolutely. We work very closely with small business areas. For instance, I'm here in New Jersey. We work very closely with the small business office here at Lakehurst, and they definitely have 8A opportunities.
Yeah, and then as far as for my side of things, we can definitely assist you by, like Andy was saying, what are you looking to do, and then sort of helping you narrow down where those opportunities are and how to find them.
Great. And I'm also going to chime in on this one. Oftentimes we do get these questions where companies have gone out, gotten the schedule, and then are waiting for the phone to ring or trying to market the schedule, where in our mind, it's kind of backwards. We suggest that first you do that market research, either use the publicly available websites, get your subscription to Deltek, do the market research to understand, is your customer even using the schedule to purchase? If so, then let that drive your decision to get the schedule, fill your pipeline, and then once you've got your schedule, then you can go back and kind of cherry pick through your pipeline. We've got another question here. Does GSA have sole source opportunities for 8A firms? If they come early to identify opportunities they are a good fit for? Ralph or Greg, as far as 8A sole source?
I'll take it. I love this guy's question, and these are the kind of people that get me excited, so that I'm glad that I've shown up. But, I tell people often that, when you look at, and excuse me, I'm from Jersey, so, you know, you got a little arm action, hand action going on. But, you know, when you look at that acquisition life cycle from the beginning of when that requirement comes out to congratulations, you start Tuesday, the further back in that acquisition life cycle you can get, the better off you are. Okay. And so again, when you look again at the relationships that you have to develop along the way, absolutely, if you should be driving the discussion to say, not only this is what I'm doing for you today, but hey, what else do you guys have that maybe you need to have done? I tell people, when you look at your 8A certification, I tell them to look at it as a bucket that could be filled with $4 million worth of goods and services. So you should be having conversations with your contracting officer and their program office people to figure out where they're trying to go. Based on that, put that 8A requirement out there, work with your district office. It's yours, you're done, and you're gone. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Anyone else want to add anything to that? Sounds like somebody's talking. Okay. And there was another one. Can the PSS, Professional Services Schedule, again, everything's been migrated to one multiple award schedule, MAS. So can the multiple award schedule be used for non-federal agencies or institutions? Greg, you want to answer that, perhaps?
I think the answer to that is, well, so the answer to that is yes. In the first place, government contractors who have prime government contractors that have proper authorization are able to purchase off of the GSA schedule. And they just have to have that written authorization from their contracting officer to be eligible. Are state and local governments, you can help me out here, Jennifer,
Sure.
Are state and local governments eligible to purchase off the schedule?
Yep. So let me rewind here. So a lot of the quasi-government entities, the World Bank, the IMF, the IFC, the Red Cross, these kind of quasi-government entities do have the ability to purchase off of the schedule. Now, for any sales reps that are on the line, your customer may not know this. You may need to educate them, but they do have that ability. When we get into state and local level, there's kind of two answers here. Number one is specific special item numbers. So the former kind of, we'll say Schedule 70 IT products and services, and then the former Schedule 84 security and law enforcement under cooperative purchasing agreement, which came into play after 9/11. George Bush signed that into legislation that then allowed state and local governments to purchase those products and services. So whatever those new special item numbers are, again, under the old Schedule 70 IT products and services and under the old Schedule 84 security and law enforcement, those do have the ability, state and local governments do have that ability to purchase off of that schedule. Now, conversely, there are some state and local governments. So for example, California has something called CMAS, C-M-A-S. It stands for California Multiple Award Schedule. Texas has TexMAS, Texas Multiple Award Schedule. New York State, there's a state contract there, and most states do have some sort of state contract or vendor list. And there is a series of hoops that you need to jump through and paperwork that needs to be completed. But in simple terms, and it's nothing is simple, your GSA schedule items, services can more or less be grandfathered into those states. So it's on a state-by-state basis to get onto their state contract vehicles, but then separately, if they're purchasing from your schedule, there are only specific special item numbers. So that's my answer. I don't know if you want to add anything to that I missed, anybody that's on the line. Okay. Where does the IDIQ listing fall under MAS? It looks like somebody's got a link here, Val Arias, to, I guess, real estate services. I'm not sure if Ralph or Andy, you know, I guess this, Val, I'm not sure if you're looking for the special item number or you're trying to provide real estate services through a GSA schedule.
No, so this list provides IDIQs for different regions and for GSA regions to provide A&E and construction services. And I wanted to see if this was being integrated into the MAS or not, or in terms of how to find those opportunities, you know, within GSA that these construction industry firms are looking for.
Okay. This one I do not know. I don't know if any of the other panelists know.
I really don't know either. I mean, at best, it would have to be kind of like a follow-up. But I know, again, like I said, over in terms of construction, you know, we're not using that schedule. So, you know, it would be an IDIQ buy. It would not be under a schedule. So I'm not being, I can't answer that fully, unfortunately.
Okay. And Ashley, I don't know if you guys sort data this way or have any IDIQ listings for this, if you're able to help out here.
No, unfortunately we don't. I can certainly look, but no.
Okay. Another question here says, can DC government use the multiple awards schedule? I'm 80% certain that they can. I would have to double check, but again, this is probably going to be one of these things where they may have the ability, just like the IMF, the World Bank, Red Cross, et cetera, but depending upon who you're working with there, maybe an educational kind of business development sales process. I believe DC government also has their own, just as most state, local, city governments do have their own vendor list. Any other questions from any of our board members from SAME? Anyone else on the line, or anything that Greg, Ralph, Andy, or Ashley that you want to add, last minute thoughts that you wish you would have said?
Nothing like that for me. Just thanks again for the invitation, and thanks for everyone who attended.
Great. We appreciate you having you as a resource, Andy. Thank you so much for participating. Ralph,
I always have a final thought, you know, and I love that. So on behalf of all the small businesses across America, you know, you guys are the backbone of this economy. 2 out of 3 net new jobs are small business. What you do matters. So in the words of Jim Valvano, don't give up, don't ever give up. There's services out here for you. There are people that can put you in places, whether through subscription services or the government themselves, but just keep digging. Make sure you're doing the work. Do the work and your success will follow.
Right. Greg, Ashley, anything to add?
Nothing major to add. Just thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Great. Thank you for sharing such valuable content. We appreciate it, Ashley. And Greg?
No, nothing from me. I just again, thanks everyone for attending, and appreciate the invitation.
Thank you all. Thanks again, Selena. Thanks to Bree, Beal, Whitney Stoll, everybody at SAME for inviting us. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot and enjoyed the interaction. And again, if you guys want copies of the slides, it looks like you'll need to type in your email address, and I believe Bree will be sending those out, or somebody from the SAME team.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely the DC Post is made up of a tremendous number of small businesses. I think that's why so many have dialed in today and listen. Everybody wants a copy of the conversation, probably wants to stay in touch with all of you. So thank you for that. And certainly it's refreshing to reaffirm that doing business with the government is relationship based. So thank you, Ralph and Andy and Greg, for being such great ambassadors, you know, representing the government today. Believe it or not, I have a long-standing federal background pursuing work with the government. So, you know, the totem pole of 8As and woman-owned businesses and saying OSDBU and FM, what's that 71.2K schedule? All these acronyms start rolling off your tongue after a while, so you do learn to talk federal. So I think on behalf of all of us who've dialed in today, thank you for preparing this presentation in such a lively way. We hope that, you know, we can invite you back to give us some updates about doing work with the GSA in the, you know, National Capital Area regions 2 and 3 and 11. So allow me then to just close the program. We do have another great program. Usually it's the 3rd Thursdays of the month. So mark your calendars for April 22. JETSI will also be another big SAME event, virtual again still. And then one of the big milestone events in our year is organized by Filios, who you spoke up during the program today. He's organizing joint events with ACEC and CMAA in June. So these are all great. The next 3 months, we've got some great programs. So stay tuned, and thanks for your interest. We'll get those PDHs out to you, and a recording of today's program. So everyone be safe. I'm aching from getting my vaccine. So the months ahead are looking better. So everyone continue to take care, and you know, we'll see you next month.
Yeah.
Bye, Jennifer.
Bye-bye,
Ashley,
everybody.
thank you very much. Ralph, thank you very much. Greg, you too. And someone will have to say thanks to Andy as well. I think he dropped off, but it was a great program today. So don't forget to have your sandwich for lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Great to meet you all.
Great to meet you too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.